Hi. Um, First thing I want to say is thank you so much for watching my 7 parts of the introduction to Copperplate Calligraphy. It's been a very positive surprise. I would have never imagined that so many people would be going through all the videos, the short videos I made and uploaded to this platform. So thank you so much. And thank you to everyone who left comments on each of those videos, because I've read them all and I very much appreciate it. Okay, so I have had a bit of a break and I thought of what to do next, and I've decided to do a new series called Variations. So in this series, I'm going to be using the same materials I used for the introduction to Copperplate Calligraphy, and I'm going to be touching subjects like ligatures, ductus, loops, and ratios. So I will use each of these videos to touch one of these points. And for today, I'm going to start with ligatures. I'm a designer and a letterer, so a lot of my work is applied digitally. My knowledge comes from typeface design, as well as calligraphy, as well as lettering. So it's a combination of knowledge as well as graphic design. So I consider myself primarily a graphic designer that has specialized in letter forms. So my outcome, my design outcome, my work mostly is digital. And so that's the big difference between me and another calligrapher that probably does a lot of original work. So just bear this in mind, because that's my approach and that's my perspective on things. And that's the reason why I dissect letter forms in such detail, because my background in typeface design has helped me to look at things in that way. Okay, so I'm gonna start slowly, like always. If you haven't watched any of the other videos and you're a beginner in Copperplate, I very much recommend you go and start with Intro to Copperplate Calligraphy part number 1, because this staging here is for students that have already a beginner knowledge, and we are going to be touching different subjects. So I'm going to go closer to the paper now. Okay. And I'm going to mark the area on the page that I'm going to be using. As you know, if you have seen any of the other videos, I have always mentioned that if you don't have any grades or any guidelines underneath and you want to use some of them to start working, you can subscribe to my email newsletters or go to my Instagram account and follow the link on my bio. And in there, you're going to have to find a couple of links. One is blank calligraphy guide sheets. And this link is going to take you to my email newsletters. And so you subscribe to the email newsletters, and then you will receive an automatic email coming saying, thank you so much for subscribing. This is a freebie and is where you can access the PDF file. So this is just one example of many you can find online. So what I'm using in here is a Copperplate guideline, which is 6mm X height. Okay, that's just about what I'm using. About my tools, I'm using a Hand 101 and a very affordable holder, and that's it. The ink I'm using is Walnut ink. I buy walnut crystals and produce the ink, and it looks like instant coffee sort of feeling, like the density and the color is like instant coffee. Now, I normally have a couple of ballpoint pens next to me because I tend to study calligraphy with a ballpoint pen or a pencil, and also with a pointed pen. So I'm going to mark the area in here. So that is the X height. And then I have the ascenders, short ascenders and long ascenders. And now I have the short descenders and the long descenders. So that these are the 5 units or the ratio of copperplate calligraphy. Now, what I'm going to be talking about today, it's about ligatures. And the probably easiest example or the most clear example when talking about ligatures is, for example, double T. So what is a ligature? A ligature is a one single stroke that unites 2 letter forms. So I think the most clear example or the most straightforward example is double T's. So if I was going to do a double T, I'm going to go up to the short ascender area, and I'm going to do the same thing and exit. And in here, instead of having 2 short crossbars, it's very easy to create a straight crossbar that unites both letter forms. So in this case, one single stroke, which is the crossbar, it's creating the bar for both these. So this is sort of the simpler ligature we can think of that is very common in English. Let's put this in context. So let's find an example that actually has a double T in the word. So the first example I can think of is the word attention. So I'm going to do that directly with the ballpoint pen. Okay, so as I mentioned, if you haven't watched, if you haven't done any introduction to Copperplate, I recommend going to the first videos first, because in here I'm going to assume that you already have knowledge on how to create all the lowercase letter forms. So I'll start with A for attention. If I feel like I'm running out of ink, I always go back and grab more ink just before going down. A 10. All right, that's an example of how we create a ligature, getting two T's together. So if I have to look at what I just did and make some comments, and I normally do that for education purposes, is that I need to be looking at the meeting points are more or less, the meeting points between the thin and the thick stroke are more or less on the same area all the time. That's gonna create the rhythm of the writing. Okay, here, here, and here. Now, by keeping a meeting point in the same area consistently, I have these negative spaces that you can see, these small triangle shapes. And that makes the rhythm of the writing. Now, the other thing I need to look at is the spacing, and it's not so obvious, but I think the spacing, it is not as even as I would like to. Well, especially in this pair AT, I feel like it's too wide. And so this space between the T and the E is probably a lot better, and so on, more or less, okay? Of course, there is always room for improvement, but you know, the important thing is that you see these details so that you can actually improve on them as you go and have more practice. Okay, now let's do another example. So the next example, which is might be not so obvious as this one, because the two T's in here are connected to each other, next to each other. The next example is, for example, the article in English, THE. So in here, I'm going to do this with a ballpoint pen and explain a couple of things. So in English, the article THE is one of the most common, and you will have to do this a million times if you are writing in English. Of course, in the capital letters, that's when we can have a look at a ligature. Okay, so what I'm doing at the moment is I am creating a capital T. And then if I have a H next to it, I have to decide two things. The first thing is maybe I am not going to add a loop in here because it's going to collapse, it's going to cross the T bar. So option one is maybe I just want to create a simple shape that has a H without the loop. Option two is I want to create the loop. Okay, we can do that, but the H can be a little bit shorter than normal just because we don't want to have like too much going on in here. All right. Option two, you will find two examples of capital T. Sometimes you will see a crossbar in this section, an intersection. I'm talking about this area. Sometimes you are not going to see that intersection because some calligraphers will decide that the T is going to be slightly shorter and there is going to be a tiny gap between the top of the T and the bar of the T. So I will present this now. So the beginning of the T is slightly shorter now, down and around. And then big loop, up, down, exit. And so you will see there is a little bit of a gap between the two areas. Okay, so in this case, we have a crossroad. In here, it's not. So this doesn't mean wrong. This just means the intersection in here. Okay, so this is okay. And this is okay too. So it's just a stylistic choice that we make. Okay, in here, we have options. So the options that we have and that I would use for my convenience is that I can create a ligature between the bar of the capital T and the lowercase h. And how am I doing that? Basically just extending this movement and now going down and creating a parallel to the capital stem. And from here, we are going to have the H and the E. In some cases, you might want to use it. In some cases, you might not. It all depends on the context, meaning if you have something on the line above the THTE, is it going to collide or is going to be fine? Do you have a space or not? So this is also a good option. Okay, so you can see how the ligature starts on the bar of the T and keeps going and generates the loop of the lowercase h. So both options are good. Let's do that with a ballpoint pen. So if I have this option in here, also this ligature can be done either not having this crossroad or having it. It doesn't matter. It works for both. Okay, what I just explained about the little gap on between the stem and the bar of the T is just a stylistic choice. You can apply the ligature in here with that example too. So let's start. And now And from here, H and lowercase e, exit. All right, so this is, I'm gonna call this ligature number 2. It's just an example, all right? The first one was a lot more obvious, so let's call that ligature 1. I'm just going to talk to you about a few examples like that. So, okay, the next example I want to talk about is, again, double T's, but this time are located not next to each other, like in this case, but in the same word. So the next example will be the word contact. So for the word contact, let's do this with a ballpoint pen. So we have letter C, and the O, and the T, and another oval, and another oval, exit. All right, so we have two T's, but it's not so obvious because they are not sitting next to each other. So if we don't think about this much, normally we just have the T and then do a straight crossbar in both of them and fine, which is totally good too. It's not a problem. In this case, we can decide to create a crossbar that unites both of them. In this case, what I would do is I will generate a crossbar that, instead of being straight for such a long time, maybe I want to generate a movement that is gonna be curvy. And by curvy, I mean I slowly go up, I slowly go down, and I slowly go up again. So something like that, that it has a little bit more life in it, okay? And so that's how we can connect both of them. I will try to avoid as much as possible to have long horizontal movements that are straight. So a short one is okay, but if it's a longer one, probably I'm going to prefer something that has a lot more movement. So something that goes up, down, and up again. Okay, let's go into the ball pointed pen. So I start with letter C, starting from the baseline. Just a second, and up, and letter C, and letter O, I normally create the ovals at 2 o'clock, so you might do the same or not, depending the school of thought that you follow. And I try to create the spacing at the same time as I'm creating the letter form. So I am very conscious about spacing as well as writing calligraphy. So I need to be looking at the two areas constantly, the white and the black at the same time. Now in here, I'm going to create or try to create a crossbar that has a few, a little bit of movement. So I'm going up, I'm going down, and I'm going up again. And that's a ligature number 3. Now it depends what the context is. This might be too long. So you will need to decide if that's what you want or if that's gonna make it weird. And if it makes it weird, so if you're not too sure and think, is it okay? Is it too forced? Then go back to the regular bars and don't use a ligature. So in here, we will have something like 1 and 2. Okay, so this will be okay. So if you are not too sure if it's looking odd or not, then go back to the books, and that's totally okay. Or all these questions will be answered by the context of what are you doing? How many words are you writing? Do you have a lot of T's? Is there a lot of movement? Is this not enough movement? Okay, it's all depending on what are you doing with this word. What is the actual final design you are doing? So that's what I call context. That's when you will answer the question if this is working or not, if it's too much or not. It will be also different if we do a capital C, and then from capital C, we are going to connect it into that, which is even more of a complex scenario. Okay, let's have a look at this. So if I had a letter C, that is a capital C, I can even extend this into 3-letter forms. So let's explain. If I have okay, now that's the body. Now, what I'm talking about in here for you to visualize what I'm talking about more or less is if you think of the logotype of Coca-Cola and you think of the capital C of that logotype. And so you will be familiarized with something similar like that. And so, you know, now just by doing that, the first impression I have is that it's going to look too forced. So that this area in here, it's probably going to look too forced. If I had to do it again, I definitely would be looking at, maybe I want to go a little bit higher, and then in this section, I want to go a little bit lower and then exit. But my first impression is that maybe this is too much, okay? But I don't know until I do it. So just by me imagining that, yeah, I might think it's a good idea, but then when I do it, I feel like, is this gonna be a really good idea or not? If it's one word like that only that you are doing, then what I call this is like problem solving, which is very much graphic design. And what I'm doing at the moment with this example is looking at this as if it was a logotype and trying to make something memorable so that the word becomes an image. Okay, in this case in here, I have the feeling that it might be forced. So maybe I'm not going to consider this option, but you can totally do it because I know that if you work and refine these shapes, it can work. So I'm going to put in here ligature number 4 just for you to consider this option. Now, next one, the next example that we have that is a lot shorter is the word hint. So with the word hint, we are going to repeat this, but the process is a lot shorter. So let's do this with the ballpoint pen first. So hint with lowercase h, the standard, let's call a standard shape, looks like that. Now, how we can convert this word into something that can turn into a ligature. So same movement I just did in here with contact, I can use it for the word hint. I'm gonna move one space below and show you. So let's start with the skeleton. What I call the skeleton is simply the main parts of the letter forms. I'm not adding dots, I'm not adding crossbars or tittles, I'm not adding loops. So purely the skeleton. So I'm going up for letter H. And then I'm going to analyze what I have in here and how can I create a ligature. So there is a way that that's obviously the downstroke of my H. There is a way which is changing the ductus, and I will talk about this in another video in this series, where I can create a loop for letter H. And from here, I can extend this movement and create a ligature with letter T. And then once I have that, then I have to take a decision where the tittle or dot of the I is going to be seated. And depending of the height of this movement, then it's going to be all the way up, all the way down. In this case, probably I will choose the space more or less in the middle between these two areas. And that's how we will create a ligature between the two of them. It is a lot shorter than that movement, so it feels a lot less force. And I would say this is probably gonna be a good idea for me to do that if I want to create something that has a little bit more movement, okay? So in here, I'm going to put a question mark because it will depend, maybe, maybe not, we have to see. In here, I would say this could easily work. So that it's gonna be ligature number 5. Okay, cool. Now let's do another example. So the other example I want to show you is the word vintage. And I'm going to be using capital V for the example. So we have the shapes of the book, let's call that. The formal shapes would look more or less like that. Capital V, up, and then okay, so we have another example in here where we have a capital and a letter T. And we can decide if we want to enlarge this to create a ligature or if it's better that we keep it simple. If I want to keep it simple, I will just create the dot and have the crossbar of the T and happy days. If we want to start studying this shape and think about ways, how can I integrate the letter forms? I can also add a little bit more detail. So maybe this section can be just a little bit more ornamented. And then maybe now the end of the V can turn into the crossbar of the T. And even if I wanted to, I can enlarge this loop, but I'm not going to be talking about loops now because I will create another short video talking about loop variations as well. So this is possibility again to integrate one movement that connects two letter forms. So let's do that with the ballpoint pen. Sorry, with the pointed pen. Okay. So let's start with capital V. Now, what I'm going to do is basically imagine where the upstroke is going and leave it like that because I need to then anticipate this movement once I know how long is this word and where the T is sitting. So I'm going to leave it like that. And then I'm going to start with lowercase I and going down. Now, just looking at this, I'm thinking I can see a lot of space, but that's life. So I need to be okay with that. N, T, A, and E. All right, now I'm looking at this example and I'm thinking, okay, so I need to go up and create quite a long movement. And then I am deciding that I'm going to create this shape, which is an horizontal oval, and cross the T and finish the letter form. So let's try this and see how we go. So I'm going up and I'm not afraid of going a little bit outside of the grid and up and exit. Okay, you can see how it gets shaky because of the movement I'm doing. That's all right. I mean, I know that if I do it 3 more times, it will get better. So it's just, you know, understanding that the pen needs hours and some days you feel better than other days. It's like having a good hair or a bad hair day. That's fine. So what I want to tell myself is that what I want to see in this section, which at the moment looks more like an eggplant, I want to see an horizontal oval. And in here is a bit like, okay, but that's the shape that I'm aiming, which is this one in here. All right, so this is again another ligature, which is the extension of the capital V into a lowercase t. And I'm pretty sure if I do that a couple of times more, it's going to get more and more refined, and I'll be happy with the result. And probably it's a very elegant way to do it. So, okay, this is gonna be called ligature number 6. Okay, and I mean, there are many examples, but I'm bringing you just a few examples for the short video. The last one we are gonna be doing is the word roller. So let's write the word roller first with the ballpoint pen. Sorry, with the ballpoint pen. So lowercase r, down, and the O. And then I'm going up and creating the loop for the first L, the loop for the second L, letter E, and second R. Whoa, that went really thin. So it can be better, okay? It should, I want it to look very similar to that one. So that's what happens. Now, option number 2 that I'm going to do that is actually creating a ligature between these L's. Is maybe, maybe not looking exactly like 2 loops, but optically it's going to look like 2 loops. So I'm going to explain this now. I'm going to start with the ballpoint pen and go letter by letter and explaining. I'm not going to be adding the loops. I'm just going to create the structure. So the bone structure of these letter forms. So letter R. Okay, I'm starting point here and going down, following the 55 degrees. I repeat the same movement again, point here and down. I make sure these are connected, and letter E and the second R. Okay, now what I want to do is a loop that it's going to be hugging both S's. First of all, I'm going to talk about something I already see, and I think is a good point to talk about this, and then I'll repeat that. With Copperplate, we use the 55 degrees for the main slant of the letter forms, and we should be keeping that angle consistently. So if I write here the slant again, now you can already see what's going on, yeah? Because it's pretty clear. So in here, these L's are trying to stand up. So they are not going with the same slant as the 55 degrees. So I have to be like, attention here. attention, because now when I was going to the loop, I could see clearly how these two ascenders for the L are going in a different angle. So I'm going to stop here and then I'm going to start again. And this is, I think, a very good example so that you can see what's going on. Okay, again. So I'll start again and try this time to follow the slant. So I'm going up. All right, now I have to try to rectify this problem. So I have to make sure that now when I go with the ascender, this time I follow the 55 degrees slant. Slow. And then E and R. Okay, now it's a little bit better. So now what I can do is very, very soft. Go back to the initial point, the first L. I'm going to start from the inside and hopefully it's going to feel a little bit easier. And I'm going up. And then I'm going to open, down, cross, and finish. Sometimes this L might look too short, so I'm just going to go up and make sure that I enlarge the letter a little bit more. And that could be an option for the word roller. In my taste, this looks a little bit too skinny, and I'm really bad at retouching because I don't normally retouch with the ball pointed pen, so I'm not going to touch it because I think I'm going to ruin that. But I would give just a little bit more wet in this section of the both L's. But definitely this is an option that we can contemplate for creating a ligature. I think it can look great. And if we used a capital R, probably it can look a really nice example in here. So ligature number 7, maybe, if I am correct. So I'm going to stop in here. I hope that was helpful. And if you have questions or suggestions for me to cover very specific topics, please leave them on the comments and I will have a look at them and they will help me to create the next short series. So in here is just a summary of what we have seen today. Thank you so much.